Yeah. So,
They're working on the videos, so we're delayed.
Justin and Mayor, your mics.
because I mean,
We have a difficulty with video right now, so we aren't going to start until we've got that working.
I would think they'd be able to, but I imagine.
He's sneaking up there.
Yeah, like I said, it's supposed
He's
to be
very tentative on the
presentation.
cake also. And she had a couple of days left. Yeah. So she's done it already. Yeah. And she was just,
So I'll text
and
them.
once again, everyone was like, no, she's back.
What time?
So,
I'll probably have Tyler text them.
his oxygen.
Okay, of course. Okay, awesome. We'll set that up. We'll get that rolling. We do, yeah.
Makes you want to. Is it something next to his season? Something
Yeah. I don't want to sit here too long.
There's no legal. There is.
No.
Yeah.
Do you think there's anybody in town yet that hasn't had their roof done? Nobody in my neighborhood.
Yeah, there's done 2 years before the storm. Very little damage. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Always happens on a night when you got a very full agenda. We can go?
Yeah.
All right. Do I cue him?
Recording.
All right, we'll call the meeting to order. Roll call.
Mr. Mayor, we have everyone present. That's 9 present and 0 absent.
Judy. Stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion and seconded to approve the agenda. Go ahead and vote.
just waiting on Butterfield. Do you want to do a voice vote?
Yes.
Okay,
Mine
that
may
would,
pop up.
eight ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you. Consent items, Judy?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, on tonight's consent agenda, we have for council's approval the city council minutes of September 5th, city council work session summary of September 11th, planning commission minutes of August 16th, planning commission minutes of September 6th, Willmar Municipal Utilities Commission minutes of September 11th, the accounts payable report for August 31st through September 13th, a resolution for the Willmar Auditorium proposal, a resolution to accept final payment application for seal and fog surfacing, project number 2308, a resolution to accept final pay application for east side drainage improvements, project number 1902B, a resolution for the asphalt pavement maintenance services bid award, a resolution to accept $20,000 from the Willmar Community Foundation grant for equitable communications project, Willmar Curling Club lawful gambling application, Temple Miners subdivision, and for council's information, the director reports, building report for August of 2023, and the finance report through August 31st, 2023.
Do I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Roll call.
That motion carries 8 ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you, Judy. Do we have anybody signed up for the open forum?
We do have one individual signed up for the open forum, and that is George Hallstrand Jr.
All right, Mr. Holstrand, you have 3 minutes.
I won't even use those items here. Give me a second, get up. Oh,
But we welcome you here tonight.
pardon?
We welcome you here
Thank
tonight.
you. Well, briefly, what I have to say is, I would just like to endorse what you're gonna do with the auditorium as far as doing the study. I think it's important, Mr. Mayor. I don't think we need to decide tonight that we gotta vote on that. I think we do the study with the people that are gonna do it. That's what I would like to see, because I grew up in this town. There's so many things that went on at that auditorium. If we can keep it, and that's a wonderful building. I know it needs a lot of work, I know that. And that doesn't answer any of the question what should happen with the city hall. But I'm just asking you to go through with that study. At least you got something to work with. And as far as where you're gonna go after that, it's open. I mean, even the little mini mall out by the big mall. I know that's off the table right now, but you might still be talking about it if that comes open. So that's all I have to say, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, George.
Yep.
All right, we have hearing for ordinance amending the charter of the city of Willmar. And we have Richard Ingen and Carla Tinklenberg here tonight from the Charter Commission. I'll open the hearing, and Richard, give us your.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mayor and Council, I'm happy to be here to present the recommendation from the Charter Commission. They recommend that the charter be amended. This came from the Planning Commission. Under the part of the charter dealing with the Planning Commission, it states that the Planning Commission should prepare and submit the 5-year capital outlay budget plan, or 5-year capital outlay plan to the City Council. And I know when I was on the Planning Commission, the majority of the people on the Planning Commission really did not have information and knowledge to make intelligent decision about most of the content of that document. The Charter Commission members have no objections to how you're operating right now. I think for many decades, things have been passed on to the Planning Commission, but it's really through an internal organization with the mayor and staff and the city administrator that prepare it. And that seems like a very appropriate manner to do it. So the part of the charter where it would delegate it to them to prepare and submit would be taken out, it's modified. And one thing that was added is what the planning commission should do. And they should have the opportunity to review and comment and recommend. But if they do not act and take action on it, after 60 or 90 days, automatically would be approved. It wouldn't hold up anything. Because I think some members of the planning commission probably don't want to bother with this at all or feel that they don't have the information to give free comment. But it seems appropriate for the city to encourage as many people to comment, or have an opportunity to comment if they feel worthwhile. So we would recommend adoption of this amendment.
All right. I will open the hearing for public comment. Anybody here to comment? If not, I'll close the hearing and open the discussion here at the council table. Tom?
Richard, how did the vocal bring this forward again?
Pardon?
How was the vote bringing it forward again from the parties that voted for it to bring it back to us? Was it 100%? Was it 3-2 like last time?
I believe it was unanimous from the commission.
Yep.
I believe it was unanimous.
Unanimous this time?
Yes.
Yep, because last time it wasn't, correct?
No.
I'm not aware that there was opposition last time either.
And then have you talked with everybody at the planning commission?
I have spoken with at least one member of the planning commission.
You haven't spoken with them all?
No.
Okay, because I was reached out by one that's not in favor of this at all.
In what respect? In respect from not preparing it, or the respect of having the opportunity to review?
That is a catch-22. It was a little bit of both, but I understand the planning commission really doesn't, see too much about it, but I'm glad that we put back in there that they have the opportunity to review, because last time we took that out.
And if they don't take action, it doesn't hold anything up. It automatically proceeds.
Okay, but if they make recommendations to change it, how does that proceed with it then?
Need to change the charter?
No, I mean, with the budget or whatever they're doing, they're looking at their stuff and they say, no, we want to see this change.
It comes back to the city council, probably through staff, but the council will have hearings on this and you'll have discussion on it. Maybe subcommittees, I would guess you have a structure that you often work on, and you would receive all this information if they have a comment.
Okay.
It's ultimately the elected officials that have the obligation and responsibility to make a decision.
Justice?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So to answer some of your questions, Councilman Butterfield, so the Planning Commission's, it's always been unanimous of their support for not having to deal with the CIP. I think like the general consensus is that they primarily control land use. They're interested in land use decisions, things going up. They're not really interested in the day-to-day of if Public Works, Parks and Rec needs another plow or like other small machinery. They don't feel it's appropriate for them to look at that. I think also when it came back to them, there was a lot of confusion about why people would insist that they be involved. I think like I said, I think they're more interested in handling the land use decisions. And then I think to answer the question, just kind of what would happen if the Planning Commission had any reviews or edits to the CIP. So from that, like if they had any edits to it, it would go back to the department head whose department it would affect of like probably requesting an explanation, because currently we don't require department heads or MUC or anybody to come to the Planning Commission to make a presentation. So it would probably work in a fashion of, hey, this has been questioned. Can you come to the Planning Commission and either explain this, or do you want to send like a written narrative to the Planning Commission about why you need this? But I think it would be better to probably have a presentation situation. Does that answer both of your questions, just kind of regarding their intent, and then also what would happen in the event that they made any recommendations upon their review?
Yes.
All right.
Okay, thank you, Justice. Any other questions? Otherwise, I'm looking for a motion. Robert?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. One thing I just want to point out, because this is a ordinance to amend the city charter under statute, in order for the amendment to take effect, the vote has to be unanimous on the council, otherwise it will not pass. Every other way to amend the charter requires an election. This is the one avenue to pass a charter amendment by ordinance, but it does require all members to vote in favor and the mayor as well. You should, if you get to that point, you should register your vote of approval as well.
No matter what?
No matter what, on this vote, this one's different than every other ordinance.
Okay.
The other thing I just wanted to make sure was clear on the substance of this. This amendment before you, it only changes which body is kind of in the first instance responsible for putting the report together. Under the existing language in the charter, it reads like that job for the city rests with the planning commission. And I think, as Director Walker commented, that function has been performed and ought to be performed by the city. Certainly, it's been revised since it was before you before to provide for review and comment by the planning commission, but that would still be a report prepared in the first instance by the city before it would come back to the city council for approval. So that's been the big difference, just who puts the work in, who's required to put the work in on the front end to actually prepare the report. That would be with the city. It would go to the planning commission for review and comment under the amended language before coming back to the city council for approval. So if there are any questions about that, I'm happy to answer them.
How many years have we been out of practice with this, from the way it was originally drafted, in the city charter till today?
I don't have the answer to that. Director Walker might.
Yeah, certainly. So the last time that I've seen a CIP budget prepared by the planning commission was in the 80s. And that was before the former Director Oakins worked here. That was the last time that had happened. And so it's kind of an operating in practice that they loosely look at it. Like I said, I mean, even back in back when I was on the planning commission, I don't remember this coming across the planning commission. And so it's just kind of an operating that it's been prepared by staff and possibly sent to them for review. But the last plan that I've seen on record, it's like early 80s.
Okay.
All right. Looking for a motion from the council.
I'll make a motion that we adopt, assign a number, and publish for the ordinance change.
All right.
Second.
And we got a motion and a second. Discussion. Audrey.
Thank you, Mayor Reese. I'm supportive of the changes that are in there, but I do think it's important when I served on the planning commission also, but for a second set of eyes to be reviewing the CIP and also to be looking at the 5-year CIP with why is it on this year and it's important this year and then all of a sudden it didn't get done. And I think that it really does take some time to do that, but I think it is worthwhile to have a second set of eyes doing that, and that it has been the practice for the planning commission to do that. So I am supportive of the ordinance change because I think in the practical sense, the staff does need to be prepare it. But I think also enough information needs to be given to the planning commission that this is part of their review to look at that 5-year, because some of that does cross over into land use and some other things, and truly as part of the planning, no different than biking or some of the other things that are in the other. So I'm supportive.
Anything else? Okay, roll call.
Just waiting on Davis and Nelson. Did you want to do a voice vote?
Didn't pop up.
It didn't come up.
Didn't?
No.
Okay. Do you want to do a voice vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. That motion carries 9 ayes, 0 nays. Sorry.
Thank you for your work. Thank you. We appreciate it. All right. Agricultural rent reimbursement, Kyle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. As a result of the sale to MB Rail just a few weeks ago, agricultural land in the industrial parks on Track 2 and Track 6, majority of those acres were not planted. About 155.28 acres is what's called out in the agenda memo. These rents were paid by the tenant earlier at the beginning of the year, and we are asking for reimbursement for not being able to use that land because of the rail, or because of the sale to MB Rail. Typically, in the contract, the agricultural lease agreement, it calls for reimbursement of rent and for crop that would be removed because of a sale like this. However, the tenant currently out there had put in costs beforehand for fertilizer, soil samplings. This was done in the spring before we could move forward with the sale of MB Rail. It was still in closed session, and we weren't sure where that was heading. So there was some work that was done early on in the year. However, crops were not planted. The tenant is requesting full reimbursement for those, and that is broken out in your packet for rent, fertilizer, and soil sampling, totaling just over $67,000. Also, for an alternative to consider for the rent portion only would be $28,000 in change. So it's up to the council. How the council would like to move forward? It's again, in the contract, it just calls for the rent and for crops. That didn't make it. That's not the exact case this year, but since there are substantial costs already in with this tenant for these tracks, again, that's why the request for the full amount is before you. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Carl?
The fertilizer was applied to the ground, it was not used elsewhere.
Correct.
Any other questions?
He had more than 2 tracts of land though, didn't he?
Yes,
6.
yeah, so this is, I get my tracks mixed up, but this is largely, I believe it's track 6, is most of that 145 acres, there are 140 plus acres that was sold to MB Rail, and then portions of track 2 as well. So it's not the entire, there's still some left over that he was able to farm this year. Crop will be able to get taken out, that the city still owns that land, but this is just for the portion that he was not able to farm.
So the fertilizer cost was just for those 2 tracks. What did he pay?
Yep, so that is, he bought fertilizer for all of his properties. This was the per acre cost, which is roughly $232 an acre is how it breaks out, I believe.
And he spread that in May?
Yes. I don't know how many total acres he has. I'm guessing it's for the city-owned land plus whatever acres he farms, whatever land he farms.
When did we sell the land?
Technically, just a couple of weeks ago.
So he wasn't able to put any crop in?
I had advised him earlier this year, I would say the June timeframe before, well, it had been before crop would have been planted, that the city is in discussion to sell this land, and we were not sure about timelines. We played it safe and advised him not to plant. But like I had mentioned, he had already done some work ahead of time.
Justin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm understanding this correctly, that the city terminated the lease in late May, early June?
Correct.
Okay.
For these
2 tracts of land, right? It seems to me, knowing not a whole lot about farming, that most farmers have probably started prepping land and putting in fertilizer at that point. Mm-hmm. So I guess I'd be in favor of reimbursing the full cost because of that. I'll go so far as to make that a motion. I'd move that the council approve the reimbursement for agricultural rent, fertilizer, and soil sampling to Justin Boyd for track 2 and track 6.
I'll second.
Who seconded it? Tom? All right. Julie?
Also, not knowing that much about farming, do we think that that's a reasonable, the breakdown per acre? I mean, is that?
Yep, we walked through the math with him, and he showed us, his receipts are attached. I know it's not much to look at, but We did verify all of his costs.
Okay. With,
And they
with-
are
with
accurate
another
to what-
farmer that would
Well,
know?
from his receipts and his costs and the acreage, and I did not verify it with another farmer, no.
Okay, I don't know if that's reasonable, or if that's,
Audrey?
I'm supportive of reimbursing the full amount. Do we need to include that the reimbursement will come from the industrial fund or from the sale of the land, or?
So agricultural, those fees are, when those rents are paid, they are paid into the industrial fund. That's why it'll come out of the industrial fund, or we're recommending it comes.
So the rents go in there too?
Correct.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Roll call.
The only one not showing up is Butterfield, and he indicated it didn't pop on his screen, so your voice vote for you?
Yeah, yes.
That motion carries 8 ayes, 0 nays.
All right, thank you, Kyle. Next is a memorandum of understanding between the city and Sweet Living. Robert?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. In your packet is a memorandum of understanding that is recommended the council approve between the city and the business operating numerous rental housing complexes in the city known as Sweet Living. I know the council has received some updates along the way, and I believe the council will be aware that the rental licenses for the Sweet Living complexes on 24th Street by Ridgewater College and at 5th Street and 15th Avenue Southwest were up for renewal this year. This MOU represents, I think, the culmination of huge effort that the city's rental housing inspections team has undertaken to inspect every unit for which license renewal was sought in multiple buildings at these locations. I have been involved in this at times with the building owner's attorney as well. Suffice it to say, there were numerous issues that on the first scheduled inspection following for each of these units, following the application for license renewal, that were documented by the city's rental inspections team that needed to be addressed before units in these buildings could have their licenses renewed. The city's practice is to conduct 3 subsequent inspections after deficiencies are noted on an initial inspection. They would re-inspect up to 3 times. The city's team did that. Even after that, the city's team, rental inspections team, prepared a supplemental report to provide an update to the building owners of the issues that remained outstanding in each of these complexes. On the flip side of that, the building owner has continued to make documented progress. Each time the city's rental housing inspector would go through, we could, I know in our office we did, track that there was progress being made to the point where a month or so ago, all of the units at the 24th Street complexes passed inspection, and I believe licenses for units in those complexes have been reissued at this point. Similarly, work has been ongoing right behind that on the 5th Street and 15th Avenue properties that Sweet Living owns. The purpose of this memorandum is to document, one, that of the issues flagged at any stage in the licensing renewal inspections for these properties at 5th Street and 15th Avenue have largely been addressed on a unit-by-unit basis, except that there's some issues noted in the MOU and timelines associated with the completion of that work that is holding up the reissuance of some of the licenses. And with that, I direct your attention to the actual MOU. The beginning of the operative language is under the heading Terms of Understanding. And in paragraph 1, it documents that there is one unit in Building A at the 415th Avenue Southwest property that's undergoing renovation and is not at this time fit for occupation, and that license will not therefore be issued for that unit until that renovation is completed and it passes inspection once the city receives notification that that work has been completed. It also documents in paragraph 2 probably the most significant repair that the building owner was required to complete, which is the roof repair, also at Building A at the 415th Avenue Southwest property. The MOU establishes a timeline for the completion of that repair on or before October 31st, 2023. And it also states that the parties agree that while that work is ongoing, and my understanding is that the building owner has applied for and been issued a building permit to complete that work by this deadline, that units within this building and the other buildings at 5th Street or 15th Avenue Southwest may continue to be occupied. And that is largely because of the progress made on the unit-by-unit issues that have been documented by the city's rental inspections team. And again, that is tied to an October 31st, 2023 completion date. It also contains language that both parties are acknowledging that the city's rental housing inspection ordinance and other provisions in city code remain applicable to both parties, both throughout the term of this MOU and after it expires on October 31st, 2023, or such earlier time as the work is completed and the rental licenses for all outstanding units are issued. I guess to kind of zoom out then, the reason we're bringing this to you, I don't know that it's strictly necessary. The city's team was administering its rental housing ordinance. The building owner has been making progress and is on track, again, if they complete the repairs documented in this MOU, to satisfy the city's conditions and receive their MOU, or excuse me, receive their renewed licenses. The reason to bring this to the council is to I think for both parties to get the city council to endorse the process that has been unfolding, which is essentially the city at a certain point here made a decision that given the number of units that are at stake here that are occupied by members of the community, given the documented progress that was being made by the building owner, and there's language in here that quantifies the dollar expenditure, it's significant, that it was in the community's interest, that was in the city's interest, certainly as well as the residents and the building owners, for this process to continue, even if we are on a somewhat longer time frame than the rental housing ordinance contemplates. So it's to get the city council to kind of endorse that process that's been ongoing and that is continuing, and to endorse this roadmap to bring each of these buildings, each of the units within the buildings, into compliance with the city's rental housing ordinance such that they may receive their license renewals on the time frame contemplated in the MOU. I'd certainly welcome any questions the council may have for me. I also do note that Mr. Zuliger from Sweet Living is here as well, if you have questions for him.
All right. Thank you, Robert. Council. Questions? Tom or Mike?
there's a lot here to absorb with. I mean, we're looking at this and I'm a little bit confused and everything that's going on. I just like to know what the Planning and Development Committee and our people will have to say about this. Do they approve this? I mean, I'd like to know what their thoughts are. Mr. Walker, could you say anything with this?
Yeah, so thank you. So I've expressed this internally, and on behalf of my house, on behalf of my staff, when we discussed like the initial findings of the MOU and I think like the terms of it, my staff wanted to put together a letter stating their opposition. I told them that wouldn't be necessary because I'd convey their sentiments, and so I've expressed that in email. That as a department, my inspectors and myself, that we were in opposition to the MOU. Yeah. So we were in opposition to the MOU just because of several clauses. I think one of the bigger things, when we held those rental housing ordinance public engagement sessions with the landlords, this was one of the things that they were very fired up about. And I think there's some clauses in the MOU that I think they would not be too happy about. And I think there are some things just kind of how a lot of this is unfolded that I think they would be very angry about. And I guess my staff was there, but it was a very explosive meeting, the first meeting. And so I've expressed those sentiments internally, just kind of like where we're at. And how we think this will be received by the landlords. But yeah, I think that was the foundation of kind of why we felt the way that we did. Like I said, it was vehement disagreement from the landlords, just kind of around just the general topic of looking at the rental housing ordinance, making any amendments, the concept of people being too big to fail. I mean, one of the things that we put forward was that cap on rental housing units or dwelling units for landlords to have without a property management company. And they were very angry about that and explicitly said that there should be no cap and it is their responsibility for them to manage their investment, whatever it may be. If they want to manage 500 units, if they want to manage 5 units, they've voluntarily taken up that responsibility and it is on them to maintain whatever timeline that is prescribed to them. And they were very hostile to the idea that anyone would voluntarily make that decision and then that they would get any leniency based on number of units that they had. And so, like I said, I mean, from that expression from the landlords, that is one of the things that staff is like really stressed.
All right. Tom?
Robert Scott, how's this going to affect the TIF program that was in place with them?
Council member, there's a couple different subsidies the city council has approved. There is a TIF for a new development at 24th Street. This will have no effect on that. My understanding is that project has not been developed. None of the commitments the city made in that approval have been triggered because they were all tied to the development of that site. There was also a tax abatement granted for one of the projects that's ongoing review right now. But this decision will not directly impact either of those subsidies. Those subsidies, the terms of them have already been agreed to. We would need to review the request for abatement proceeds for the earlier of the two agreements that the city approved. And if they've satisfied the conditions of that agreement, then they'd be entitled to reimbursement. If they haven't, then the city would have to give notice why not. So there would be no direct impact by approving this MOU with either of the two subsidies the council had approved for any properties owned by this owner.
Okay.
Councilmember Nelson?
Thank you. I'm a little confused and I have a few questions. If I understand correctly, this memorandum of understanding only exists until October something? October 31st, until they complete what they've said they're going to do. And so I don't know what happens if they don't complete it by that time with that. But if there's any concern they have, probably that we allowed them to take too much time. Is that what you're referencing? Justice, with people being upset about it. But I also have a question. I've taken more complaints about the properties on Fifth Street, and they're not listed on, so are they all complete? Is there any issues over there with water or any issues left over there? But my real question is, once this is all done, when will we be inspecting it again? There's been a multitude of problems, so will they fall into a different type of category to be re-inspected? So I got a bunch of questions.
Yeah, certainly. So I think our biggest concern, I think, was like a lack of trust, I think, for them as an entity. And I think just because, so I will verify, I mean, what our Attorney Scott has said about like them making a lot of substantial progress in their units and like the rental licenses being issued and like them making material gains. One of the things to understand is that we only control the physical condition of the units. We do not police their business practices. We field multiple complaints on a monthly basis about their business practices, and that we have had to refer them to legal aid on several occasions. Like this is an ongoing thing. We do not get business complaints about any other business in town or any other landlord in town, just kind of regarding some of the things that they're doing. And we've had to direct people that we cannot control that. That has been ongoing throughout this process. I think that is one of the reasons that staff does not have faith in this, because I mean we've expressed that. We feel in some of these clauses that they may weaponize this against tenants. We've gotten allegations that they have. We've gotten allegations that they've retaliated against tenants. So I think as far as like the material condition of the units, there's some places where we have outstanding complaints. I don't think that's at any of the addresses that Attorney Scott has listed. But I mean, we got new complaints today coming in for some of their other units in town. And so just kind of on a lot of this was kind of based on trust and not having faith that they would not weaponize this against tenants in some capacity. And then I think just kind of as far as going forward about what would their inspection schedule be regarding like with them racking up violations or having sustained violations. Those are one of the provisions that we were looking at putting in the rental housing ordinance. Those about when we had a lot of those public engagement sessions with the landlords about what the rental housing ordinance was going to look like. And that was something that the landlords were supportive of. I think just from a lot of the movement internally, and I think kind of a lot of philosophical discussions that we've had around this, we really kind of stopped looking. I mean, we really kind of stopped some of the ordinance changes to the rental housing ordinance, just because I think internally, I mean, we need to be aligned on what enforcement is going to look like, what's legally defensible, and things of that nature. And so I think there's still like a lot of discussion to be had kind of around what it's going to look like going forward. But I think around what's going to be, what's next for them currently, I guess they've been issued a 4-year license and for like the properties that have just been re-inspected. And then I think there's still like a lot of question around what properties need to be inspected. What does that mean for the violations? And then what are the properties? How many properties are subject to inspection? Just because of the bevy of properties that they have in town.
Another question? Councilmember Schultes.
So my understanding is that there are still complaints coming in on units, and you even received a couple today on some units. I understand that they have put a large amount of money, $800,000 I think was the number that was, but obviously that's not enough. How much time do they need to get this done? Last spring, it was supposed to be done in June. And now here we are coming into October and we're still talking about giving them more time. What happens October 31st when they don't have everything done and all these other complaints now are coming in still? It's frustrating that it's taking so long to get this done. And I just don't think that we should be cutting them any breaks, that we need to hold their toes to the fire a little more maybe to get this stuff done.
Mr. Mayor, may I address the council?
I have one more.
Well, let's let the council, yeah.
You said there were complaints. Are these confirmed complaints by our inspectors, or is this just word of mouth from?
Yeah, so how the complaint process works now, we don't take complaints unless we verified that the landlord has been contacted and notified of the complaints. And so now, like the notification process, we send out a letter and then like we set up a joint inspection with their property management or with their maintenance staff, and then we verified it. So of the outstanding complaints, there's one that we have set up the inspection for, and then we have another inspection to verify a complaint tomorrow. And then there are 2 inspection letters that are going out this week for inspections next week to verify the complaints that came in this week. And so we have one that is verified, and then there are the 3 subsequent inspections to verify the other complaints that we've got.
Calling Leslie Valiant, city administrator.
Council, I think we need to be very clear here that there's separate issues. There's complaints that are ongoing from renters. Now, those are handled differently. Those are not under rental license inspection complaints. So they're separate, and they're handled separately. So I just want to make sure that you're understanding that there are rental inspections, and that's what we're talking about here under the MOU. We're not talking about ongoing complaints that we may be receiving from residents. Those are totally different than our rental license. We get rental complaints about every rental in town. They don't affect their rental license. That's just an ongoing thing is rental complaints. And I don't mean that but there's a difference here. We're dealing with the rental license and we don't hold up rental license because we get complaints from residents. So what I'm saying is that we could get a complaint from ABC down the road, but that doesn't hold up their rental license. I hope that clears up a little bit.
Attorney Robert Scott.
To that point, the way this works, when a owner of a rental housing unit or multiple units applies for renewal of a rental housing license, the city will inspect that unit or those units under a checklist. You have checklists that's been established and is ties to the criteria in your ordinance. The rental housing inspector will go through the unit or units, and for each unit, we'll complete the checklist. And if there's something he observes that is not in compliance, we'll check the box, and that will get turned into a written report to the building owner, which is essentially the list of issues that need to be corrected to get your license. What we're talking about, if we're talking about complaints that are coming in, those are handled, they're not ignored. There's a provision in the ordinance for the city to investigate those complaints, to provide notice to the building owner, and if after that notice and potentially an inspection of the conditions of the unit or units complained of, if there are violations noted, there's a specific procedure that has to be followed where the city provides written notice and a deadline to correct the violations that, if it is not met, could result in revocation or suspension of the license for that unit or units. So what this MOU is addressing is the rental licensing inspections and really the completion of a lengthy process that has been ongoing this year. I do have some, I think, responsive comments to Director Walker and to some of the questions the council has asked. The question was posed, what happens if these repairs are not completed by October 31st, 2023? Under paragraph 7, it's clear that it's the owner's responsibility to comply with the city's ordinance, and that if the repairs aren't completed such that the licenses may be reissued by that deadline, that the owner shall be subject to fines for its failure to remedy any of those issues according to the city's standard policy. One of my other comments is that I disagree with the premise that this MOU represents the city being lenient or something. There's nothing in this MOU that says any unit in any of these complexes can be relicensed if they haven't completed the work that the city identified through its routine rental housing inspections that it conducts for any unit for which a license is applied. Every unit will have to have had the issues documented in the initial inspection addressed to the satisfaction of the city's building inspector. Nothing here is allowing a license to issue to a unit that doesn't satisfy the criteria in the city's ordinance. And that's been the focus. I will tell you, this was developed, this MOU was developed certainly in discussions with representatives of the building owner and with city administration, and with extensive input from Director Walker and the rental housing inspections team. Clearly, wasn't necessarily expecting this. Clearly, there's not unanimous support for this from the department. These have been difficult decisions to put this together and to even recommend that this be brought to you for consideration. But the city administrator, operations director, and I thought this was the best way forward. And again, what we're talking about here are the licenses that allow hundreds of units across these complexes to be rented out and to be occupied, and they are occupied currently. So the focus has been certainly make them comply, make them correct any issues documented, but make every unit meet the city's criteria and its ordinances such that they can be relicensed, because that is a far better option than any sort of enforcement avenue or license suspension or revocation avenue or litigated path, which is what the alternative to something like this, I believe, was. That's why we're bringing it forward to you. That's why administration and I recommend the council approve it. This is a big deal. It's taken a lot of all of our attention. I certainly respect the perspective that Director Walker has articulated. I have enormous respect for the hard work that the rental housing department has put in. The fact that we're even to this point where we can bring an agreement like this to you for consideration that really represents kind of the last work left for these buildings and these units to meet the city's criteria in its ordinance is a testament to the dedication and hard work that that entire team with the city has put in. So I do want to be clear about that. But I at this point, want to answer any other questions the council has.
Councilmember Nelson, then Shoulders.
Thank you, Mayor Reese. Just for clarification, if I heard correctly, their licenses were reinstated, or they have licenses right now. Is that correct? And if they don't follow through on this memorandum of understanding by that date, they would be subject to a fine, but the license is still already there, right?
The license expired, and in conjunction with the expiration of the previous license, applications were made for renewal of these licenses. So we are past the expiration date, but the city has not taken any steps to, because the city has not tried to suspend them or not given a notice that they will not be renewed. The city has issued reports documenting the violations or the issues that were documented on the rental housing inspectors' routine inspections of these units. They did not pass initially, many of them. And since that stage, this has just been a exercise in trying to make sure we're communicating accurate information to the building owner so they know what the issues are that need to be addressed, and checking their work, making sure our follow-up inspections are conducted and we're documenting whether the issues originally noted have been addressed or not. And we're, again, very close to the end of that process.
So just if they follow through and they complete everything before that date, the licenses will be reinstated. So they aren't yet.
Correct.
Correct,
For
okay.
these units, for the 24th Street properties, they have been. It may be the case that some of the 5th Street and 15th Avenue have, but for the buildings and units noted specifically in this MOU, this MOU represents the roadmap to get to a place where compliance is achieved and the licenses can be renewed.
Yeah, and I guess to kind of add on to that, so the reason for that is like one of the corrections that needs to be made is a roof repair for an entire building that houses multiple units, and so normally under a situation like that where there's a repair that needs to be made to an entire building, they will not be renewed until until that repair is made, and so repairs have been made on a unit level, but repairs to the structural integrity of the building had not been made, and so then the deadline more speaks to the structural integrity of the building that needs to be made. That way the licenses for those units will be renewed with those. And there's like another outstanding unit that had accessibility challenges that need to be mitigated as well. And so that's why like it's almost this cascading effect. There's like it's an umbrella if you think of it in that regard.
Councilmember Shoulders.
So my concern, or one of my concerns, is if we go through with this, are we then willing to extend this same type of deal to any landlord where they have unlimited time to, well, maybe not unlimited, but, we keep extending the time for them to make needed repairs. I struggle with the idea that we just keep lengthening the amount of time that we're giving them to get this done, and they have not lived up to their end of the bargain yet, in my opinion. So, I mean, I guess my question is, are we opening up or setting a precedent then where we need to do this for all landlords in town?
Yeah. Councilmember, I think that's an excellent question, and I know we've had a lot of discussion about that with the city's team internally, and I guess I will just answer for myself that my advice would be the same no matter what the owner of the buildings at issue is, which is the focus should be on making sure the buildings are brought into compliance with the standards in the city code so that they can be relicensed. And if there's a viable path and the building owner is demonstrating efforts to bring those units into compliance, that the city should try and facilitate that, because that's always going to be a better option. That's just my advice. If you find yourself in a similar situation with a different building owner with extensive repairs to make, but an apparent willingness to make them, I don't shy away from the fact that I would recommend the city council try and facilitate that process to allow that building owner to make those repairs. In every case, the city should be concerned that the buildings actually do come into compliance. I'm not recommending in this case, or nor would I in any other, that the city, ignore the criteria in this ordinance and issue a license for a building that doesn't comply. But compliance and relicensure is better than potential litigation, or more importantly, forcing residents of these buildings to vacate their premises, which is what we're talking about.
Councilmember Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Attorney Scott, I was about to ask what happens if we don't agree to the memorandum, and I think you just answered that question. Is that accurate? Would you agree to that? Or?
I'm not sure. If the council does not agree to this memorandum, I think it would still kind of fall on the shoulders ultimately of your city administrator, certainly with the input from the rental inspections department. But ultimately, if the buildings or units at issue comply with the city's rental housing ordinance, with the standards in the ordinance, my advice is going to be to staff to reissue the licenses.
Right, but we have some buildings that aren't there right now.
Right.
Thus the need for the memorandum. So if we say no to the memorandum, is there any kind of deadline for some kind of consequence that is triggered?
I think if that, in that case, if hypothetically this memorandum is not approved tonight, before there would be any sort of enforcement action, the city would need to send a new written notice to inform of whatever the timeline ultimately agreed to at an administrative level would be and what the consequences would be. The city does have fines, schedules of fines they could impose, but certainly that has not been the direction that the administration has taken. Certainly with my advice, tried to create space for the building owner to come into compliance without taking a aggressive enforcement approach at this stage. So we would need to, I guess, reverse course and send something out that notifies the building owner that approach is going to be different. But I don't know exactly what that would look like yet.
So it sounds to me like if we would, if this memorandum is not agreed to, it's not that a whole bunch of people would be without a home tomorrow, but rather that the administration has some opportunities, including some fines that they could use to leverage these improvements. Is that accurate from what you're saying?
That's correct, yes. But I mean, if we're talking about instead of a more cooperative approach with a roadmap to compliance and relicensure, a more confrontational approach, the ultimate ending of that approach would be, an attempt to not renew the licenses. And if that's the case, then yes, we're talking about vacation of occupied premises.
Okay, thank you. And then one more question, and this one's for Director Walker. You mentioned that you and your department had objections to specific parts of the memorandum earlier in kind of the opening comments that you made in regards to Mr. O'Brien's questions. Could you specify what areas of the memorandum that you and your department are opposed to?
Yeah, so there were several places, I think, over the course of this where they really kind of hid behind loopholes of the ordinance. Some things required certified mail, and then addresses would change, or some things require notification, and instead of some things require a certain type of notification, and then instead of verifying it in the moment, then you need the deference to mitigate it yourself. And I think those are places where, as a staff, we felt that, and I guess kind of explain the difference. So right now, let's say we have a complaint. We get the complaint. We send out the letter. Hey, you will meet us at this location at this date at this time. We are going to verify this complaint. Cool. What they wanted as a substantial difference was we just want the notice. We don't have to agree to verify this. We just want the notice. And so then from that point, because if they got the notice, then they would be able to mitigate the complaint without the city ever getting involved. Our concern was that because we've gotten complaints about retaliation, we've gotten complaints that they have been petitioned multiple times by residents hey, this is an issue, hey, this is an issue, hey, this is an issue, and then they've been ignored, is that if we do not verify this complaint and we do not put a timeline associated with this complaint, that by the time this gets to us, this would have been an ongoing issue for several months before we even can put eyes on it within a week or give them a 30-day timeline to address it. And I say that because this has happened. People have come to us and have said, hey, we've tried to address this with them on multiple occasions. This has gone on for several months, and we haven't had any luck making any headway. Mm-hmm. And so from that regard, and just kind of how some of, like I said, I think a big part of this is just the trust and them exploiting any loophole that they could create or find to hide behind and weaponize against tenants and to weaponize against staff going forward in this. And I guess and I do want to confirm the units that we are talking about, they have been renewed. Like I said, it's really just a structural issue that could affect this. And to confirm, this would not be staff moving to evict a bunch of people tomorrow. That is something that we've been very diligent about avoiding. This is just about kind of the working relationship of this going forward and how this has been hostile throughout the entire process.
So I hear you saying that it's been a hostile relationship, that your staff lacks trust in the building owner. What I'm trying to get to is your opposition to the memorandum. Is there something specific, like item E, where that really comes into play, or is this just more about an overall lack of trust and therefore not wanting to enter into any agreement?
No. So there were several. So with it, like I said, like the clause about and I guess like how it sounds is that like everybody on both parties would follow the ordinance. Right, like so that's been the main thing, that they've been really kind of hammering the technicality of the ordinance and kind of how this is working. And like I said, I mean, they're exploiting some of the places where there isn't enough clarity in the ordinance to really kind of hide behind and kind of define what some of these things need to be and kind of how this operates. And so that was one of the main things, of that we did not want to deviate from the current practice of sending a notice and then verifying upfront that there was a violation and that this needs to be addressed in a certain time frame. That was one of the things that we explicitly wanted. I think kind of from the other perspective of this, I think just the general idea of administrative extensions, like I said, was I use this quote. I mean, this is meat to the wolves. Like for the landlords, there are other hostile landlords in town who have been held at bay because they are under the impression that everybody has to face whatever penalties that we have as a staff and as a department. And this like flies in the face of that, and I think kind of undermines that confidence for a lot of them. And like I said, like those meetings that we had, they were very explosive. Like I said, and my entire staff was there. They were very angry. I mean, there were several points where it kind of got out of hand. But like I said, I think that's the main opposition for us. And I think that bolsters our opinion that any MOU with any landlord does not work, because they all feel that like the MOU is in the ordinance. Like you understand when you're a property owner that this is what you will be subject to if you want to rent property in town, and that any deviation from that undermines that. And they were very hostile to the idea that anybody would be exempted from it. They wanted harsher penalties for everybody, understanding that if I get got one day, then I get got. And so on that stance, and then also I think the explicit verbiage in the MOU needs to reflect that if we get a complaint, that we verify it, that the notice is sent, and that you must meet us at that unit at a certain date and time, and then that it must be mitigated in a certain date and time to prevent them from hiding behind this timeline that they're going to mitigate it and then they don't, and then that we never hear from the tenants because they retaliated against the tenants. And so that was our main concern. And like I said, a lot of that stems from just an overall lack of trust from them, and I think a lot of like the business practices that we've also had allegations about as well.
Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. And I'm feeling like we're combining some things together here. Our frustration with the fact that this happened to begin with, our frustration for why it has taken this long, because we've been listening and hearing about this for a long time. And then a concern for, we don't want this to happen again. But I'm looking at the memorandum of understanding and recognizing we all hold some responsibility for where we're at today. And is this the best way to try to resolve where we're at right now? And then if there's other things that need to be changed to the rental inspection, the rental code or whatever it is, with that we don't just say, oh, let's not worry about it until the next time, let's do something about it. So I'm just curious. I know that you worked hard on coming up with this, and I know that you've worked hard with them to hold their feet to the fire to some degree, but it does feel like it's taken a really long time. So I feel conflicted about it, and yet at the same time, if us supporting this memorandum of understanding helps us to get closer to being done with this, then that's maybe what we need to do.
Councilmember Butterfield.
Justice, do you know how long they've been running with their expired license right now?
So, yeah, so the initial inspections would have been, would have been November, like October, November of 2022.
So almost a year.
Councilmember Shoulders.
So kind of off what Councilperson Nelson said, if we agree to the MOU, does that potentially allow a quicker resolution to the problems? If we turn down the MOU, would that extend things out further? I mean, would the MOU force them to act more quickly?
Yeah, I think that's also an excellent question. And I think the way I see this, which I know isn't the perspective everyone has, is there is a big hole dug, potentially, where a lot of units were up for relicensure at the time, and there were lots of units and a lot of those lots of issues in a lot of those units. And that has been a burden, I'm sure, for the building owner. It's been a burden for city staff. It's been a burden for our office to try and advise city staff on how to handle this. And this MOU, again, is coming to you, I think, at the culmination here. And we're looking for the council to endorse the last few steps here. And they're not insignificant. The building owner, the roof on building A, that's a big deal. That's been outstanding. We've been waiting on that. But they have the permit. They are assuring us that project will be completed. We've got the deadline in here. So from my perspective, we've got what is a very short-term agreement, a short-term understanding between the city and one owner of a lot of units in your community to make these last steps, make sure we're on the same page, because Director Walker mentioned some ambiguities or uncertainties with the existing ordinance. I think there has been some of that, where I think the city has a defensible interpretation of what it means and implementation of it that wasn't immediately apparent to the building owner. Not making excuses at all, but there has been some challenge our office has had. So to get back to your original question, I think this is my recommendation would be the council approve it. It's because I think this is the best way to get everyone on the same page, to get these issues resolved on the quickest time frame possible. That's my opinion. I don't know if others involved have a different opinion, but that's my opinion.
Councilmember Osmus.
Thank you. I guess I'm not understanding why we need to do an MOU. I don't understand how that quickens it or changes anything. To me, we have an ordinance. I could understand if we needed to make corrections to the ordinance so that that landlords can't go through these loopholes and find ways to keep extending demands that they improve something. I mean, we have an obligation to make sure that people live in a safe, clean apartment. And to me, we've documented this stuff for months and months and months, going on years. And to say that this, allows us to get on the same page, I don't know how we couldn't even be on the same page up to this point. They know what they need to fix. We've told them it has to get fixed. They've gone round and round with the building inspectors. I don't understand what an MOU does for that. I mean, you make it sound very civil, that if they just do this, then this will happen. But we also know that there has been game playing, and there has been diversion and deception and frustration. And to me, the MOU is saying to Sweet Living that we appreciate that the work that you have done, and we do. I mean, they have been working at making improvements. But to me, the whole licensing process, if the building passes inspection, and Director Walker has stated that, then check. Then they can get their license renewed. If they have a unit, or if they have a problem that isn't fixed, then why would we do an MOU that says we will renew it at a certain date because we believe that you will take care of that? We're past that. We're past any point of trust and understanding that that is going to happen. So either it's done by the date that it's supposed to be done by, or there has to be some consequences. I don't understand how this MOU would make anything get any quicker. The landlord, the business owner, has to understand that we have said this has to get fixed. And if they don't do it, what does that, we've talked about it, what does that say to the other landlords? That, do they not then have to fix what we tell them they're supposed to fix? I mean, I just think we have set the precedence here. If we need to change something in the ordinance to give it some teeth, then I feel like we should be addressing that. I'm not understanding the purpose of an MOU.
Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. Sitting here just listening, what's our liability? What's the city's liability in this right now? And if we don't do this, is there more liability?
There is some exposure for the city in this situation. And I think this ties into the previous question from Councilor Osmus. The fact is there are aspects to the city's code that it's not immediately apparent to a building owner what it means. There's dispute over what sort of notice was required. Every time the city's rental housing inspector re-inspects for the original list of issues documented in the first inspection after the license application was submitted, is a new report required. The building owner's position has been that, yes, every time you go through our units and you find something not in compliance, you have to send us a new report. The city doesn't operate that way. The city operates where we gave you the list, and it's up to you to fix it, and we'll come through to see how you're doing on your list. Paragraph 5 actually addresses that and talks about what the city code requires on these licensing inspections. Yes, written notice, but then inspecting only items that were notified on the original written notice, not a new report every time the inspector comes through. Director Walker had expressed some concerns about what I believe is paragraph 4 of the MOU, where there is a city, in your ordinance right now, there is a requirement that when a complaint comes in from a unit, the first step the city takes before formal action is to notify the owner and try and verify the complaint. We just quoted that language from the existing city ordinance and then said, okay, going forward, these are the people we're sending notice to. The address is right in the MOU. So yes, it's true that address or those requests have changed a lot of times. We're kind of pinning them down with paragraph 4 here, that this is where notices are going to go. There are issues where I think it benefits both sides to get on the same page, so to speak. So that's why administration and I worked through this agreement to bring to you. I still recommend you approve it, but.
Well, after hearing all this, I think we, as a city, have to take a look at their rental licensing, go through that, so there's no loopholes to be jumping through to get us back here next time with something like this. So I think the city has some work to do, to help protect the tax base of this. I'm not in favor of this at all. This has been going on too long, for over a year. And if we do this, it's going to let all the other tenants or landlords know, oh, we can just keep on kicking the can down the road. You know, it's time that we let them be accountable for their license. You know, it's been up for years, so they've been, you know, making rent and not doing a heck of a lot to the other ones. You know, we're almost snow time again and roof's still not fixed. And that was one of the main things. That was one of the complaints, was the roof, and that one's still not fixed.
Councilmember Fagerly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just a question, is the state involved anymore with the condition of any buildings or units?
I don't know the answer to that question. They have not been involved through our office at all, but
Because that's how it got started, wasn't it? The state informed them that they were in investigation mode?
I can't speak to that. What I can speak to is the city has specific standards in its rental housing ordinance regarding the physical condition of these units, and that's what the city's concern has to be.
Okay, so the state, they may be involved in business practices, but that has nothing to do with the city.
It has nothing to do with the city.
Okay, and then a question on the roof. That is very important. You gotta remember, we've had a lot of storms in the area, so the roofing contractors are busy, and there isn't that many commercial ones anymore, so, and this is a large building, so it does take time, and I can live with October 31st, but then if it comes and goes and it's not done, then we have to do something. I think we were told before not to shut them down because there'd be a lot of people without apartments, so that's why we didn't do anything.
Any more questions? Well, roll call.
We
Don't have a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding.
I'll
We have a
second it.
We got a second. Any further discussion? Roll call.
I didn't get mine.
I'm waiting on Nelson, and she said she didn't get it. Do you want to do a voice vote?
Aye.
Aye. And also waiting for Mr. O'Brien.
No.
We have 3 ayes and 5 nays, so it fails.
Well, we'll see where it goes from here. All right, Aaron, proposed budget for EDC.
All right. Aaron Backman, Executive Director of the EDC. I'm happy to be here tonight to talk about the 2024 budget for the EDC. This is my 9th budget presentation to the council. The EDC's Joint Operations Board on June 8th and the Joint Powers Board on July 27th approved the proposed 2024 budget of the EDC. The projected revenue of the EDC totals $723,906, including a county tax levy of $608,056. This is actually a decrease from the current year budget of $1.223 million. There were significant one-times that were in that particular budget. For example, there was $258,000 that were ARPA funds. There was $200,000 that was a deed childcare grant. There was $30,000 from First Children's Finance. All 3 of those were related to childcare. So if you take that out, you back that out, we're actually down about $12,000. In terms of the county tax levy, that represents a $30,056 increase or 5.2% increase from the current fiscal year. And I'll just, because I know time is short here, but I'll just say that in terms of our initiatives, a key one for us this year is related to childcare. So one of the things that we're doing right now is a shared position that has been proposed between UCAP and the EDC. And it would be split 60-40, 60% the responsibility of UCAP, 40% responsibility of the EDC. We'd be looking at 3 days at UCAP, 2 days at the EDC. And they've posted that, and they're going through the hiring process right now. Each of us had some funding for childcare initiatives, but not enough individually to have a full-time person. So we'd be looking at a childcare community coordinator, and we're excited about that opportunity. We have had other things going on. As you know, I was mentioned earlier in terms of the industrial park. Was very pleased that we had the closing on the 144 acres on September 6th. In fact, I talked with Brian earlier today on some next steps, because I'm pushing him on next steps. We have other projects that we're working on. We've been able to leverage about $25 million in terms of broadband over the past year, which is notable. We've got various projects that are underway right now. You've probably heard about industrial hemp. We have a significant potential project. We had a hemp fiber demonstration event that happened on September 7th out west of town here in St. John's Township. We have a group out of the Netherlands that's looking at potentially a sizable project, $40 million project. They've come out this way 5 times. It's not a fit necessarily for the industrial park, but we think it would be a fit in Candy, Ojai County. And so we're excited that we have potentially some investors from outside our area willing to put money here. So any questions on the budget? Just kind of a high-level budget.
Any questions for Aaron? Thank you, Aaron.
Okay.
Keep moving forward.
All right.
The next item is the mayor's proposed budget.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, we need to have a motion to accept the
Oh.
EDC budget.
I'll make the motion to accept the 2024 budget for the Candy, Ojai County and City of Willmar Economic Development Commission.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
That motion carries 8 ayes, 0 nays.
Next item is the mayor's proposed budget for 2024 and the setting of the preliminary property tax levy. And as mayor of the city of Willmar, the charter requires me to submit to the council the budget for the upcoming fiscal year, describing any proposed financial policy changes and reasons for these changes, and summarize the city's debt position along with all other information requested by the council. The 2024 budget I am proposing addresses the city's mission statement of providing responsible municipal service in an open, effective, and efficient manner to all citizens while achieving Willmar's community values. The 2024 budget includes the general fund, special revenue funds, debt service fund, enterprise funds, and a 5-year capital improvement plan. The 2024, since 2016, the city has purposely reduced its reserves to best practice standards and use those reserves to use those dollars to fund various capital improvement projects. As a city, we can no longer use these dollars to fund capital improvement projects and equipment. And I recommend that the council slowly and strategically introduce these dollars into the general levy using transfers from the Community Investment Fund. The city will continue to intentionally levy for both a new city hall and added city improvement projects, street projects. The council established separate debt service levies in the 2022 budget to fund these two specific areas of improvement. Street improvements continue to be a top priority in the 2024 budget. And for the first time in our history, the city of Willmar has adopted a 10-year street improvement plan. This improvement plan is a living document evaluated and updated annually to coordinate our future projects with the municipal utilities and Candy High County. The council has prioritized street improvements reflecting investment in our community. And we as a council have tasked staff to provide methods to diligently fund and forecast street improvement projects like our robotics survey, apply for and receive grant funding, and cohesively work with internal and external partners to ensure that these projects, these investments, can carry forward in the future years for future councils. A city hall project is significant, and the city has been allocating dollars since 2022 to put towards a new city hall. As a council, we continue to work toward finding a new location for the city hall. We are sensibly setting aside dollars to pay for this project and any future bonds. I have spoken about investment in our community, and it should also be known that we want to invest in our employees too. In November 2022, the council authorized staff to work with a consultant on a comprehensive wage study over the last year. This study accomplishes highly competitive wages for the retention of our current employees and the recruitment of new prospective employees. The council should be prepared to hear further, understand, and be ready to implement this study by the beginning of the new year. This evening, I am presenting a balanced budget which includes $1,536,250 for capital improvements and vehicle replacement. The council has met in a work session to review these list of improvements and vehicles. For the 2024 budget, I propose a 3.909 tax rate increase dedicated to additional street debt service and the 2023 city tax rate of 53.033 would then be proposed to increase to 56.942, or a levy increase of 15.08% for the city portion only. As a reminder, it should be known that when the council adopts the preliminary levy and certifies it to Candy High County, we can no longer increase our levy, only decrease it before the adoption of the budget in December of this year. So, I'm looking for a resolution. Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I do have a few slides to walk you through as well, if that'd be okay.
Yes.
It's working up here, but not on, there we go.
Do you have it up on your packets here on your end?
Tom, we need you to put that back into that computer now for the voting. There you go.
All right, so I guess I can go over initially, the preliminary 2024 budget, just to provide a timeline of where we're at. Tonight is the night where we'll certify the preliminary 2024 tax levy to the county. Throughout the months of October and November, the council and the mayor can recommend and provide input to compile final changes for the tax levy for 2024. On December 4th, we're recommending to hold the TNT, or the Truth in Taxation hearing, during a regular city council meeting. Throughout that, then we must certify our 2024 tax levy by the end of December and submit that to Candy Ohio County for 2024 taxes. So the next few slides are going to show a little bit of show some history of some adopted budgets. We're going to show some present data, and then we're going to look into the future and what the future may look like for the city. This graph right here is an illustration of the last several years. The top green line are the budgeted expenditure amounts that the city has adopted, and the bottom blue line is the budgeted amount for revenues. So as you can see, the expenses outpace the revenues. So what this has done, it has spent down some of our reserve balance to a point where staff recommends that we do not do that any further. So you can just see we've been operating at a deficit budget for a few years, and that has been a planned, budgeted, adopted budget. So now we're looking at what the city is obligated to pay next year in 2024, debt service from the tax levy. So the first one you'll see here is the 2018A refrigeration bond. This is to replace the refrigeration system at the Civic Center, and that is solely from taxes. There are no special assessments associated with this bond. The next two, the 2022A and 2023A bonds, are the street bonds from 2022 and 2023. In the past, we have used the Community Investment Fund and assessments to pay for our street bonds. Starting in 2022, there was a street levy on the taxes, so that is the street levy portion. And then the city hall levy is for the future potential city hall debt. So the council has been, this will be the third year of the levy for city hall. The total of these payments is $1,557,040. So this slide is an illustration of the street debt service. So 2022, like I just mentioned, was the first year that the council had levied for a street debt. And then in 2022, it was 2 mills or 2% of the tax rate. In 2023, that increased to 4 mills or 4% of the tax rate. And in 2024, staff is recommending that we are just going to make the required payments on the 2022 and 2023 bonds. So that's why you'll see the lines shift a little bit there. And then at work session, we did talk about the Community Investment Fund and how it has been paying for the street improvement bonds. So this just shows the future payments of the obligations of the Community Investment Fund. So starting in continuing on in 2024 through 2031, the reason for the decrease in the line on the graph would be, as we go on, they were always 10-year bonds. So in 2031 would be the last payment required out of the Community Investment Fund. This graph shows the city hall debt service. So along with the street levy, the city has levied for the city hall, and that was at 3 mills or 3% of the tax rate. So this is actually a great illustration just to show the increase in tax base for the city of Willmar. The rate of the whole has been consistent, but you'll see that the levy has gone up from 474,000 up to a proposed 555,000. So that is just a good illustration to show that the city of Willmar has grown in its tax base. So kind of back to the Community Investment Fund. This is a little bit of the past and then also a forward-looking view of the Community Investment Fund. And actually, the numbers aren't coming through very well on this screen, but this is what it may look like if we only made payments on the bonds of the obligations of the bonds. This also does not take into any account any increases or any transfers into the Community Investment Fund. And then at the work session, we did talk about potentially doing Community Investment Fund with CIP transfer, so paying for some of the capital improvement plan out of the Community Investment Fund. And what we're proposing today is to start in 2024, 1.186 million, and then continue on to 1 million in 2025, 750 in 26, and 500,000 in 2027 out of the Community Investment Fund, just to help ease into the city going back on the CIP process and paying for it out of the general fund. So this is just an illustration that there would still be a positive balance in 2031 after all obligations were made. And this is just a potential look. This obviously, if anything is acted on tonight, it would not affect anything past 2024. So as the mayor had just mentioned, the 2024 proposed balanced budget, you'll see that the operating did have a modest increase up to $9.218 million. The street debt, that is the 2022 and 2023 bonds, and as well as the city hall debt, is an increase of $1,385,596 over 2023's levy, or a 3.909% on the tax rate or mill rate. So what does that mean for the residents of Willmar, citizens of Willmar, property owners in the town? This is a $71 increase on a house valued at $200,000. Up to $195 on a property valued at $500,000. I do want to notate, though, that this is if the property didn't fluctuate at all. This doesn't take into account any of the property valuations fluctuating. So the true tax impact would be just under 7.5%. The increase in levy is about 15, but the true tax impact would be about 7.5 or just under. So then this last slide shows just the dollar amount of the levy history from 2020 through the proposed 2024. So that'll be all I have if there are any questions from the council.
Any questions? If not, thank you, Tom. Looking for a resolution. Pretty quiet.
I'm not going to make the resolution. I'm just curious, this was the first we received. This information was for this council meeting, and so I have lots of questions looking at, how much our operating has gone up, questions about, our LGA went up, just lots of them. But I also recognize we're at deadline to submit our figures for truth and taxation kind of with that. So I'm just curious what our next steps are, that we will have the opportunity to have more discussion on the figures and look at some of the figures. So I'm not sold yet on using up the community investment fund, but I don't know what our options are if we don't. So what will we be doing next to go through these figures?
I can't answer that. Leslie?
We will be continue to talking to the council during our work sessions over the next months before the final budget is needed in December 4th. We just know that, that we can't, once this is passed tonight, we can't go up anymore. We have to go down.
Tom?
We hear this every year, we can't go up anymore, but we can go down, but we never go down. I'm in agreement with Audrey. This increase in the operating expense is too much with the way that the inflation's going right now. We're pushing it all back on the taxpayers. I've received about 5-6 phone calls on the percent that I guess there was an article in the Tribune that was going up like 15-16%. So I received a few phone calls on that today. And the biggest thing that I hear back from the constituents, and I'm sure all you agree, and I know the city can agree, is taxes and streets. I would be perfectly fine running with about $8 million operating expense from last year, plus figuring in if we do have to pay for the school resource officers coming up, I would like to see that added in there. I would be in agreement with the street debt going up, because that's the second concern that we always hear, is taxes and streets. I can see paying a little bit more for the streets, and I'd be in agreement with bringing up City Hall, because more we can raise now, less we would have to borrow then. But this operating expense is not a win for the taxpayers. Nothing. I don't see one benefit out of everything I've looked through that's going to help out the average taxpayer that's looking either, do I pay my rent or do I pay food this month with the way the inflation's going?
Tom, you got something?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. On that note, we've worked very diligently with some departments, and there are some departments that have been under budgeted at times, that we have had a more realistic and look at the budgets for those departments. And along with that, this does include the wage study for staff for the city to bring that more in line, as Mr. Mayor had spoke about during his address too.
And it includes fully funding, it also includes fully funding the SRO program.
Justin?
A question, just to clarify, you were saying that there were some budget, or some departments that, whose budgets were under budget, you said? They were coming in under budget?
Yeah, in the past couple of years during, at year end, there are a couple departments that were, that were under budget. So we looked at, like for instance, some of the insurance for the, work comp insurance was under budgeted. So we made those corrections
They
going
were
forward.
under budgeted, meaning expenses were exceeding the budget. Is that
In years
correct?
past, correct.
In years past, and so now we've adjusted for that, thus like the 15-ish% increase in operating expense?
That would be part of it, yep. Yep.
Questions? What do you want to do? Julie?
Well, we know we have to make a decision tonight to be able to go forward with the truth and taxation hearing. So I'll make a motion to receive the mayor's 2024 proposed budget and adopt a resolution to set the preliminary levy for property taxes payable 2024, and to set the truth and taxation hearing on December 4th, 2023, on or after 6:30 PM, knowing that we're going to discuss this further at work sessions and try to do some whittling.
Second.
All right, we got a resolution and a second. Tom?
Oscar goes first.
Go ahead.
Okay. Again, I want to state, we're always told we can come down, but we don't come down. It's time we have to start looking out for the little person, the single mom out there making $25,000, $30,000 a year. Rent's going to be going up huge. We're talking, we always talk we need housing and affordable housing. This is going to cost all rent from apartments, rental properties, rental houses going up. There's going to be people that can't afford this. $71 a year may not seem like a lot to a dual income or anything else like that, but to the lower tier people in town here, that $71 is going to matter if they're going to have electricity in November or food on the table. You know, I would like to see it back down to about $8 million on the operating. You know, if we don't know where this inflation is going to go, if it's going to keep going up and up and up and up. But you look at the steaks right now, they're $20 a pound. They used to be $10. In the past year, it's almost doubled. People's wages in this town have not gone up double to cover this food. This is not the city of Willmar's tax base at all.
Councilmember Osk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to echo what both council members Nelson and Butterfield have said, and just saying, like, I'm not at all comfortable with where we're at right now. This is going to have to come down. And I agree that we hear it every year, oh, it can come down. And I've yet to personally witness that in my time on the council. I'm not comfortable with where it is right now. I can recognize that we're at a deadline and we have the ability to bring it down, but we need to be serious, I think, about that. Because to Councilman Butterfield's point, I don't think $71 is realistic, because whose house hasn't increased in value in the last year? So it's good to be more than $71. I appreciate Mr. Oden's pointing out that that's just the tax impact, but it's good to be more for, you know, your average taxpayer. Not to mention, you know, the county's likely to be increasing taxes at the same time. The school is likely to be increasing if that referendum passes. I think we have to be responsible with what we're looking to do here. And I appreciate the work that's gone in to bring us to this point, but I think there's still more work to be done before we can come to a final vote on this.
Okay. You've got a motion and a second. Audrey, go ahead.
I stated it before, but I am uncomfortable, and I too hope that we will get both information on both our revenues and our expenses and just try to get our arms around what we're doing here and the large increases with that. So, but I know we're at deadline and we don't really have a choice right now.
Any other questions, comments? Roll call.
The only one that's showing up is Councilmember Nelson. She indicated it didn't appear on her screen, so voice vote, aye. That motion passes, 7 ayes, 1 nay. Councilmember Butterfield casting the nay vote.
Tom, tell us about Invest in Willmar.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I'm here this evening on behalf of Parks and Rec to request the final payment for the Recreation and Event Center. Construction started in the fall of 2021 and then it officially opened in November of 2022. And this was funded by the local's option sales tax. Marcus Construction and LSE Architects were the firms to design and oversee the construction of the facility. We received the final pay application where final quantities were reviewed by Marcus Construction and staff of the city of Willmar. Staff recommends adopting a resolution to authorize final payment to Marcus Construction in the amount of $128,000, or $128,325.52.
I so move.
Second.
We got a motion and a second to adopt the resolution. Oh, that's,
Mayor.
Julie?
Okay. I don't have any issue with paying them the final bill. Do we know what the contingency funds left over for this project are?
Yes, we are working on that. Actually, the director and myself have been talking back and forth and we're trying to get those numbers finalized to share with council.
Okay. Because who's all done so far? Which projects?
The athletic fields, Swanson Fields, the rec event center, and I believe the Robbins Island is complete as well.
Okay.
So outstanding would be the stormwater, which is ongoing, and as well as the community center, which is a future project.
Right. Okay.
Okay, so we've got, go ahead.
No, just following up with Julie, and I know where she's going because she wants to transfer for some funds, I think, to other projects. There were contingency lists for each of those projects. So when you bring us that, what's left over, will you also let us know what didn't get done because we didn't think we had funds to do that?
Yes, we can do that as well.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, we've got a proposed resolution with a second. Any other questions? Roll call.
That motion carries 8 ayes, 0 nays.
Thanks, Tom. Jared, we're going to order the 2023 assessment hearing.
Evening, Mayor Council. What you have before you in your packets this evening is a resolution calling for the assessment hearing on October 16th at 6:32 p.m. for the projects that are currently under construction and wrapping up construction. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. The notice that will be sent out to residents is included in your packets this evening. Of course, each individual resident gets their individual amount based on their project or on their property front footage. So that's the substance of the notice that every resident will receive prior to the hearing. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Tom?
It's not really a question, it's just a recommendation. Last year, 6th Street Southwest was narrowed. This year, Irene Avenue was narrowed. I didn't know anything about it. I received a few phone calls, and I know another council member has though too. Just in the future, if we're gonna be narrowing the street, can we let that street know right on top, your street is gonna be narrower to get conform with the other side? Because it's been a big issue, and it took me a little bit to get information last year why it was shrunk. This year, I at least knew how to answer the question when I got called on it, but I know the people on Irene are not happy with the reduction. They were kind of surprised on how narrow the street is now.
Okay, sure.
But I mean, in future projects, we need to put that right on top, bullet point, let them know that the street's gonna be narrow.
Yeah, and I know it's one thing that staff's been looking into, and certainly if council has suggestions on how to make that more apparent, as you know, council at the hearing, improvement hearing, I had a specific slide that identified the street widths because of that very thing from the previous year, that trying to bring more awareness to exactly the streets that were being modified as part of that process. So I absolutely, it is tough when curb is getting ready and residents call and say, hey, is my street getting more narrow? And it's yes, it is. And then they explain that they didn't know about it. So certainly be happy to, and we'll work hard to make sure everyone knows about the proposed street widths.
But it's been on two little streets, not that big, not that much of a difference, but the Irene, I know that one really got shrunk down compared to Sixth Street. So, and I know they were very concerned about it. I would just like to be more transparent with the property owners going forward, that, hey, your street's gonna be reduced by this much, let them know right up front. So if there's any objections at that time, it can be addressed before we get into bidding it out.
All right. Do we have a resolution?
I move that we adopt the resolution ordering preparation of the assessment roll and calling for the assessment hearing for projects number 2301A, 2301C, and 2303 for the 2023 street and other improvements. The assessment hearing is scheduled to be held October 16th, 2023 at 6:32 p.m.
I'll second.
We got a motion and a second. Any questions? Roll call.
That motion carries 8 ayes, 0 nays.
All right, Jared, you're on again. Trot Avenue stormwater improvements.
All right, thanks, Mayor. And again, good evening, Council and Mayor. The Trot Avenue stormwater improvements is a project that was described to Council a few months back, but ultimately located along Trot Avenue on September 8th. We received 8 bids for that project. The low bid was submitted by Swenson and Sons Construction from New London in the amount of $173,791. Project is located straight south of the farm right property. Will provide flood reduction for not only that area, but also the area east of the tracks near 15th. So good bids received for the project, and as you'll note, there's a couple items for you this evening, should you so choose to move this project forward. There is a resolution accepting the bid for the improvement. That's the first item. You'll notice that the resolution is written that the project be awarded contingent on the easement from Farm Right. I did have a meeting with Farm Right today. Everything's in order. They just need to move it through their internal process. Dan did indicate to me that we'll have that by the end of the week, but nonetheless, we just want to make sure that should, for whatever reason, if that easement, we don't want to award a contract before the easement is there, so that's why it's written that way. There are no concerns with that easement. And then the second one is the resolution adopting the as-bid budget, and you'll note that project funding for this improvement is from the local option sales tax stormwater component. So with that, I will pause and answer any questions that council might have.
So we can still pass a resolution for it? Okay. Questions? Rick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Have we used this firm before?
Swenson and Sons? Yes. Yep. They've done some work previously out at the airport, and a few other smaller projects around town. Yep.
Because such a wide range of bids, 173 to 298. So are the other ones really busy and they didn't have time, or?
Yeah, so the low bid was 173. The next lowest bid was 209, and then the highest bid was 298. Yep.
So they must have been really, really busy.
I think it's a function of the workload they have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
Any other questions? Otherwise, looking for a resolution.
I'll adopt a resolution awarding the Trot Avenue Stormwater Improvement Project to Swenson and Sons Construction in the amount of $173,791, contingent upon the execution of a permanent easement by Farm Right Equipment of Willmar.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions? Roll call.
That motion carries 8 ayes, 0 nays.
All right, then we need an adopt as bid budget for,
Then I'll adopt a resolution approving the as-bid budget for the Trot Avenue Stormwater Improvement Project in the amount of $270,311.
Second.
questions. Roll call.
That motion also carries 8 ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you, Jared.
Thanks, Mayor and Council.
Next is agricultural land exemption of special assessments. Judy.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, before you tonight is a resolution approving the agricultural land exemptions for special assessments. It's a policy of the city to temporarily exempt from assessments certain lands currently used for agricultural purposes. And each year we make contact with the listed landowners for their desire to place the land in agricultural use for the upcoming 2024 crop year. Attached is a resolution listing the property owners who made application, and it is staff's recommendation to approve as presented.
All right.
So moved.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Discussion? Questions? Roll call.
That motion carries 8 ayes, 0 nays.
Judy, you're up next. Set special assessment hearing.
Okay, let me just get the computer going here. Okay, next is the specialist set a public hearing for October 2nd for the special assessment hearing for unpaid fire alarm system charges.
So moved.
Second.
You got a motion and a second. Questions? Roll call.
That motion also carries 8 ayes, 0 nays.
Back to you again, Judy. Snow and ice removal charges.
Okay, let me just, doing double duty here, so. Okay, the next item before you is to set a public hearing for October 2nd for unpaid snow and ice removal charges. And
So
we
moved.
did have, there were 4 properties that are listed before you, and we did receive payment on one of those, which would be for parcel number 950065640 Angela SB. So that will be removed from placing on the tax roll.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Questions? Roll call.
Councilmember Davis, to do a voice vote?
Aye.
That passes, 8 ayes, 0 nays.
And weed grass mowing.
And again, Mayor and Council, before you is a request to set a public hearing for October 2nd for the unpaid weed and grass mowing removal charges.
So moved.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Questions? Roll call.
That motion passes, 8 ayes, 0 nays.
Next is open access fiber update. Justice.
Perfect. Cool. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'll be providing a update on our open access fiber project and just kind of where we are, just kind of current standings. So it'll be an overview of just kind of the progress we've made up to this time. Timeline just kind of going forward, just kind of a high level view, and then just kind of like a tangible roadmap for steps that need to be followed, just kind of where we're at, and just kind of explaining kind of the reasoning behind a lot of this. Okay, so where are we? So a lot of this has been a concept for a while, just kind of we're going to get the best internet in the state, and, there's going to be a revenue bond, and, the city wasn't going to have to pay anything for it, it's just going to work out, it's just going to be really, really nice. So I think over the past couple of months, we had multiple meetings with the broadband committee, and we've really hammered this thing out. We've kind of put together a lot of tangible steps of what needs to be done and kind of the finances, and we've identified a lot of the questions that need to be answered. As you guys know, we've brought on a lot of talent just kind of around people with this niche expertise and bonding in different areas for municipal open access fiber networks, or people who were had expertise building them. And it's really paid off. So where we are now is we have 2 contracts that really are glove in hand, and they have all the engineering for every single phase kind of mapped out. We've broken down the phases into 5 separate phases. We've really kind of identified where this could go. We're putting together a survey, and we are starting to come in with projections of what the expectation should be on a revenue side. So then with finances, now I think that probably lies like the biggest question, because how to do it, we've answered that question. We're at a point to where we have the contracts in front of us to decide if we want to press play on this and we want to put this in motion. And I guess those contracts are ready. I think what we're waiting on now is the financial question of how do we pay for this? And so I know we talked about the revenue bond, and I guess like the total estimation of it would be roughly $22 to $25 million, just kind of with the current present city limits. But part of that is the city's equity stake of that we would have to put up for the bond in that. And so right now we're looking at numbers in between 20 to 30%, and then kind of what that pathway will look like for the equity piece. And so there's, just to be candid, there's a several $1 million hurdle that the city is trying to figure out as far as if this money needs to be, it needs to be appropriated. Can it be tangible liquid money that we have at the moment, or can it be prospective money? And so it's kind of where we're at, just trying to answer the questions of how do we pay for this and get to that point where we do achieve the not levying taxes to pay for this. So then on the how it will work, we've answered all of those questions, I think, just kind of structurally, and I'll get to that. Kind of, there's a diagram that speaks to that. But this very complex concept, like I said, has gone to a very tangible. I don't think there's a question that you could ask myself, or the broadband committee that we have not thought about, that we have not vetted, and that we have not come up with an answer to, short of the financial hurdle. And I think that's what we're kind of working through. We had a meeting about it today. So then just timeline. So what would this look like, and what kind of are the expectations? And so the timeline and the finances are kind of all tied together. And so I guess we can kind of start at the bottom here, which is kind of maximizing construction season. And so with construction season kind of starting around April and May, for that to happen, we need to have engineering, we need to have construction documents. We need to have all of this kind of planned out of like where things are going to go. And so to do that, we need to be able to pay for that. And so if you work backwards, the maximizing construction season, let's say we get construction started in, let's say, mid-April. The bond sales need to happen around mid-March, and then we can open bids for the contractors. And then for the contractors to go forward with those bids, they need to have the construction documents that will be prepared by the engineering firms of Bolton & Mink and Hometown Fiber. And so they'll be working on our network architecture and the network design. Like I said, I mean, those are those two contracts that are really glove in hand. I know it kind of looks like, with Bolton & Mink kind of being the city engineer, that they're kind of vetting some of this, but a lot of this is working together from the inception of this idea to put together what is needed. And so there's a little bit of urgency kind of around this, because I mean, it's to put together the engineering documents for each phase is about a 7-month process. And so to kind of take advantage of the maximizing the construction season, kind of getting things rolling in April, they'd be looking for approval kind of around this time, like in October. Probably like the next meeting, honestly, to really kind of, like I said, maximize the construction season kind of going forward. So that's just kind of the rough timeline. Everything kind of happens in 7-month phases from there. So then I'll explain a little more. All right, so then road to open access fiber. So after this slide, there's going to be kind of like some group slides that just kind of explain it a little more in depth. So it's the approving the contracts, establishing the broadband committee that we've kind of talked about, kind of taking that from the committee right now that involves a lot of staff and a council member to probably involving community members, probably still some staff, and probably a council member, just that's how big the project is. And then just kind of looking at some of the technicalities on the granular level with opt-ins and the phase marketing push. So contracts and boards. So on this, there's a diagram that just kind of shows the city of Willmar. I know like the big logo, that's not really just a logo, it kind of means the city. And so we've really kind of worked through how this would work. It does kind of show the grievances, so I'll walk through it. So it's the city of Willmar, which would more so represent the city council. And then you guys would draft the broadband committee board, and then that board would use the use contract to govern the relationship between the city and Hometown Fiber. And then Hometown Fiber has a relationship that governs, uses their relationship with the ISPs to inform the services and everything that are going to be provided to the customer. The customer takes any grievances they may have, brings that back to the broadband committee, and then they would use the use contract to govern that. So that use contract is very important just for the life of the open access fiber network. And so the contracts that you guys should be aware of, there's the engineering contract and the two engineering contracts for a total of $1.7 million. And so Bolton & Mink's contract's just over $1 million at like, I think it's $1,017,000. And then Hometown Fiber's contract's right in the range of $670,000. So like I said, about $1.7 million. And so then that's part of like the city's equity stake, finance, technical stuff there, of kind of getting us closer to the equity stake and kind of putting that roadmap together of how we can pay for this. Then with the use contract, so that use contract directly governs the fiber network and all of the things that can happen on it, the grievances, ISPs, the memberships, et cetera, et cetera. So it's essential, very critical to the use of the open access fiber network. And right now that's currently in review with Attorney Robert Scott in his office. So then from the contracts and the boards, the marketing and the opt-in. So I just kind of initially, it was Hometown Fiber's thought that the ISPs would take a stake in this and like really have a forward push for some of the marketing, but just kind of talking with some of the people who've been involved with this in other states, that is just not the case. I mean, hang out a door hanger. They just don't have that much skin in the game, but we do. And so one of the things that we've talked about is establishing a partnered marketing approach with Hometown Fiber to let people know that this is going to happen. And so it would be by phases. We have 5 phases. I didn't include it in here. It's on like this GIS link right now. This is kind of primarily for internal use. But we would do this by phases. And big thing with that would be that opt-in clause of like kind of that cutoff date would be a month before the construction documents would be finished for each one. That way we know where we're going to go. And I guess like an important part about that is that people will not be charged to opt in. But if you come back to us after this cutoff date, then you will be charged for the connection from the major line to your house. And that is something that the city is going to pick up for you. So it would be in the best interest of everybody to opt in on the front end to not have to pick up that cost. So then that opt-in clause, like the importance of that would be that it allows contractors onto your private property to just put this in. You do not have to take the service, but that is something that is going to have to be legally drafted that we're going to have to look at. And then also encouraging people to sign up. And I guess part of this, I didn't mention in the last slide, this will be done and executed by the broadband committee. And so one of the things I do want to touch on, the broadband board, like I said, does govern that contract and would be responsible for a lot of this. Going to be very important to draft and identify people who are going to be committed to this. Just because, I mean, this is going to be a very heavy lift, probably bi-weekly meetings, and then probably once this is up and running, probably like a monthly meeting. Like I said, I mean, this is going to be a $25 million asset and a contract that governs the revenues of private businesses and for the city. So very important that y'all give thought to who is on that board. Very important that they understand what is being asked of them and the participation of this board. So then bonds and construction. So like I talked about the revenue bond sale, ideally we would have that in March. And so one of the things that initially I know we kind of talked about having that this fall, and then it became January, and then it became March. And so the update with that is that it doesn't make sense to bond for something in the fall, and then we have to hold on to all those funds, and it's not going to get out the door for several more months. So we thought it'd be a good idea to kind of give ourselves some more time on the back end. And then also, once we have that money, we can put it to use virtually immediately. And so that's the idea of kind of looking at that March timeline. And then we can kind of go from there with the bids going out and then kind of getting everything rolling. So like I said, I mean, we'd like to start with, we'd like to maximize construction season. So as soon as the thaw hits, kind of late April, we'd like to get rolling on that. And then service would start and be online for phase 1 and phase 2 next fall. And so total build out would happen in roughly 2.5, 3 years. So the entire current contiguous city limits would be totally built out with 100 gig symmetrical internet fall of 26. So it's all businesses, all private residences, and kind of looking at it from that perspective. So, I mean, this has been an aggressive timeline. And like I said, I mean, none of this is conceptual anymore. We have a really sophisticated Gantt chart that kind of reflects everything that I've said here. So like I said, I mean, we've really hammered out a lot of the nuts and bolts, got a lot of the granular level detail, and we've kind of worked backwards from that. Like I said, the last hurdle for us is how do we get to the city's equity stake? And we're still kind of playing with some options and kind of what that looks like. But I think right now, just kind of on the conceptually how this would work and will it function, it's been all systems go. And like I said, I mean, we're still working diligently to kind of get answers on the financial side. That way we can make this a reality. And so that's with that. I mean, that's the reason why we did not come before you all tonight with these 2 contracts to put forward, because we didn't think it made sense to obligate the city to spending $1.7 million without a tangible path to getting the city's equity stake that would then deliver the bonds for us. So once we get the answer to the city's equity stake, then we'll be back in front of you with the engineering contracts to kind of set this thing in motion. But that's where we are. We're on the top of the hill, about to push the stone down of like, we're just doing it. So we've come a long way. Like I said, I think from the concept, from this crazy idea to where we have all the answers of how this would work, and taking this from theory to a roadmap, a tangible roadmap, how this could get done. So with that, I mean, I could go a lot more in depth. I mean, we have 90-minute meetings, what seems like virtually like every couple of weeks now about this. So yeah, I'll turn that over to you, Mr. Mayor, for any questions.
Well, you don't have any action tied to this, but I guess there might be some questions. Carl.
Justice, thank you for being the point on this. I know this has been a lot of work for you. I'm sorry that we're losing you on this, and I certainly hope that there is somebody that can carry on after you're gone, that will take the lead on this, take the point on it, and run with it like you have. And I just want to say I really appreciate all of the work that you've done on this.
Thank you.
Mike?
I've had the pleasure of being on this committee, and it's been amazing how this all came together, how it's all coming together. Mr. Walker, Mr. Box, I mean, it was just, I just really had a good time on this committee, watching how all these people work. But like you just said, we're going to lose him. And with that, we're going to lose a lot of information, okay? And Kyle, Mr. Box has a lot of it, but it's going to be in his head, okay? His connections. So my suggestion is, and I talked to some of the committee members too after our meeting a little bit, should we think about a retainer or a consultant type situation when he's gone? So as a needed, we can get in touch with him and get the things that we need to move forward. And I guess that would be my suggestion to this council, is that we do that. I mean, you can't imagine all the contacts he has.
Tom?
Would you agree with that, Mr. Walker?
Yeah, I don't really want to advocate for that, but totally up to y'all. So,
Well, following up on what O'Brien said, would you be willing to be on retainer?
Yeah,
Consultant?
yeah, I would. Yeah, I would.
I think we have our city administrator look into possibilities.
I don't think you need to make a decision on that at this time. I'd like further conversation on that.
Yeah. Audrey?
Can I ask a question about money? So, when you talk about the 1.7, needing to sign contracts, revenue bonds, what's the city portion of the obligation of that? And is that already in our budget for next year?
Yeah, so I guess kind of on that, one of the things that we've talked about is, so if this is a $20 to $25 million bond, it's like that 20-30% range. And so one of the questions that I think we're trying to get an answer to is if that has to be tangible money or if that can be just prospective money. And so when I say prospective money, the money that counts towards this would be these contracts that would tie up the city's equity stake. And then I guess a lot of this is to bond sale. And so these aren't, so this isn't money that I guess the city that we'd just be out the 1.7. The goal would be to stagger these contracts to get us to the bond sale. And then the city would reimburse itself from that bond sale for some of the things that we've put out. And so, I mean, I've already been in negotiations with Hometown Fiber, and they've submitted alternative payment structures for what they wanted. Normally they do 50% down and then the other 50% at completion. But with this, I think they would do 30% down, and then there would be incremental payments paid to them just kind of on deliverable. And then the bulk of those deliverables and the bulk, that 70% would come after bond sale. And so all of those things would still be protected from the city and would, I guess, not come out of the city's budget, I guess is the short answer that I'm trying to say.
But we'd have to upfront it.
Yes. And so the money that has been paid for these contracts currently has been coming out of the city's industrial park fund. That's where we've identified for some of these things for some of these costs to come out of, since these improvements will be made in the industrial park fund, in the industrial park.
Okay. Any other questions? Otherwise, we'll move on. All right, Justice, order of the annexation.
All right. Yeah, so the joint orderly annexation, so that's 15th Street Southwest. There's 2 lots on the east side of the street. They're going to come in as residential lots to the city. We received petitions to annex from 100% of the property owners of the 2 parcels. They are both looking to annex to come in for city water and sewer. One has already submitted a building permit application for a house that they plan to construct this year. Pretty straightforward, since they're contiguous to the current city limits. They would be on, they'd be eligible for just being annexed by ordinance. And then from this, this would go to the township board for that to be approved. And then any outstanding assessments that they do have will need to be paid, and that way it can be recorded and ratified with the state. So that, Mr. Mayor, I turn it over to you for any questions.
So this is just a simple motion? All right. Questions or motion?
I got a question.
Yes, go
Thank you,
ahead.
Mr. Mayor. So do they have to pay tapping fees then to hook up to the water and sewer? And do they have to pay for the street?
Yes. So, okay, so no to your first answer, yes to your second answer. So, yes on the assessments. And so each property owner has been notified of the amount of assessments that they need to be paid by November 15th. They both have said that they'll be in this week to pay them, both the assessments. And then as far as the tapping fees, so our tapping fees to get hooked up with WMU, but on a residential level, single family residential, the city does not charge sack and whack fees. And so there is a hookup fee for WMU, but not for the city that we charge. Like whether that be for multifamily or industrial or commercial, how we charge sack and whack.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Other questions?
Make a motion.
Robert?
Approve.
Very quick clarification. So this is essentially an agreement between the city and the township that's before you, and it takes the form of a resolution passed by both governing bodies. So this is a joint resolution for orderly annexation. So you're voting on a resolution.
Okay. Rick?
I'll make a motion to approve the annexation subject to Willmar Township approving it.
Okay.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Audrey?
Just a quick question. Has the township already agreed in concept to this?
Yeah, so at my last time when I had an annexation to them, they don't fight annexations. Like if they want to annex in for city services, then they just let them go. And so this is slated to go to the township on the first meeting in November. They've already been notified and it is on their agenda.
Thank you.
All right. No other questions? Roll call.
That motion carries 8 ayes, 0 nays.
Right? Justice shipping container discussion.
Yeah. All right. Fun stuff. All right. So shipping containers discussion, exactly as it sounds. So we'll go over kind of what triggered us to have this discussion, installations in other cities and also installations in town. I don't know if you all are familiar, but there has been shipping container construction in town, and then also staff recommendation. So really like a confluence of things. We've had several unauthorized shipping containers just kind of popping up. When I say several, I mean a lot. So a lot of people just kind of use them as cheap storage solutions. I mean, you can get 20 by 40, not 20 by 40, was it 8 by 40 shipping containers for like roughly $2,000 to $3,000. I mean, that's a lot. So then also, I mean, just kind of with how our ordinances are set up, you don't need a permit for any structures under 200 square feet. So people have been opting to get the 8 by 20 shipping containers and using those as storage, whether that be for residential use, commercial use, industrial use, et cetera. They're kind of all over the place. And so our building official, he just not really thrilled with them, would like to do something about it. So we just kind of want some answers there. So like I said, I mean, storage needs for residents, storage needs for some businesses. And also some business owners have come to us just with kind of proposals, and shipping containers have been central to those business ideas. And so we really felt that it was high time that we make this official and kind of formalize our stance on shipping containers. And like I said, one of the things that are driving this, I mean, just the cost of these things. Oftentimes these alternative building materials are a better option and a cheaper option for people, like I said, with storage issues or people trying to build things. So it's not going away. It is something that we do need to have an opinion on. So right now I just kind of have like a list of cities. So there's, I have examples of what these look like. So single family residential in Flagstaff, Arizona, multifamily residential in Johannesburg, South Africa. And that's the one kind of pictured here. And then there's temporary retail space in Grand Marais, Minnesota, and then food hall event space in Greenville, South Carolina. So we'll go to the Flagstaff house. And so if you guys, can you guys see this? Yeah, just pulled up. Can you guys see the website that I'm on? Or all right. So if you guys can see, it's like a mint green shipping container house in Flagstaff, Arizona. FlagstaffContainerHouse.com. It's this container house in their historic district downtown. It's if you go to the bottom of the page, it reads what it says, but it's a 2,000 square foot home, the first shipping container home in Arizona. It's made from 6 recycled shipping containers located in historic Southside Flagstaff. It is a 2-story dwelling with a spacious atrium living, dining room, 2 bedrooms, 2 baths, 2 studio offices, galley, kitchen, plant solarium, 5 decks with views of the San Francisco peaks and a lively street life in the friendly outdoor loving university town. So the reason I included this was that these are the possibilities with shipping containers. I know a lot of people think that, like, they're these super rusty, very ugly, dingy, dented things. They are, but they don't have to be. They're not always that. And so some people have gotten very creative about what these things can look like. I think we've even swayed the city engineer about what he could possibly do with some shipping containers. So that was an interesting conversation that day. So then from that, we'll move to Sydney's in Grand Marais. So I don't know how many of you guys have spent time in Grand Marais, but they have an iconic restaurant, ice cream shop, Sydney's. And unfortunately, they had a fire earlier this year before the season opened. And right now they have a temporary space on one of their main drags that's on the corner here. And so these are pictures of it. If you kind of zoom in, where they have a deck built onto it, they have windows cut into it. It's very, very nice. I'm biased. I like ice cream a lot, but I went there multiple times. But I thought this was very fascinating. I even took pictures of it, and I sent it to my building official to just kind of say, like, hey, these are some of the applications. And of course, he had his objections, just no accessible use to the deck. But I think this is what I'm talking about. These shipping containers do not have to be these ugly, rusted things. They have a wood fire oven in there that makes pizza, and so just people are using them for all sorts of things here. And I guess I'll swing back to the Johannesburg. So the Johannesburg is kind of like a really wild scenario. It's like an 8-story building that they use with shipping containers. I think that's beyond the pale of what the Planning Commission has an appetite for. I think they'd be more in line with applications like the single family house or something kind of this nature. And then Gather Greenville. I think this is so this one's a quick video, but I guess I just kind of want to frame it. So this is, you'll kind of see from the video, just kind of like where this is located, but also these are prominent features in people's downtowns. These are prominent features across communities in the United States and kind of all over the world. These aren't places where they're just in forgotten parts of downtown that people have neglected. So I'll just play this video.
Stephanie Freeman, I am the general manager of Gather Greenville. Gather Greenville is an outdoor food court with 13 different vendors. Everyone is welcome at Gather, whether you're 1 or 100, and you can bring your pets as well. Gather Greenville is located in the west end of downtown at 126 Augusta Street. We're across the street from the South Carolina Children's Theater and right next door to the baseball stadium. There is public parking and a lot right beside us, courtesy of the city of Greenville, for $1 an hour. There's street parking and 2 parking lots adjacent to us. No matter who you are or what you like, Gather is definitely going to have an option for you. From pizza to sushi to tacos to chicken, we have everything. In addition to food, Gather has craft beer, wine, frozen wine drinks, mimosas, cocktails, and a full bar. Are you vegan or gluten-free? Have no fear. Almost all of our vendors have an option for you. The majority of our seating at Gather is first come, first serve. We do have 3 VIP areas that you can reserve. The stage, which is downstairs, and the lookout in the den, which are upstairs. You can also host your private event here from 20 to 125 people. You can do business dinners, birthday parties, rehearsal dinners, anything you can think of. Wondering what you can bring in for your private event? We don't allow outside food or drinks, but you're welcome to bring in a dessert. Gather isn't just a place to eat or drink. You can come hang out here as well. We do live entertainment on Thursday nights and Sunday afternoons. In addition to live music, we do pop-ups, community events, and more. Do we have bathrooms on site? Yes, we do. They're in the back left corner between units 5 and 6. Big red container. Can't miss it. Gather is open all year round. We have heaters in the winter, big fans in the summer, complimentary Wi-Fi, and plenty of places to sit. Have any general inquiries or want to book a private event? Reach out on our website, gathergreenville.com, and be sure and follow us on our social medias at GatherGVL.
All right, so the point of that was just kind of to showcase the creativity and what's happening with these things. Like I said, I mean, like, so that part of Greenville, like she mentioned, right across from, right in their West End Arts District, right from their right next to their baseball stadium. It is a highly trafficked area. I say this as a Clemson grad and someone who's spent a lot of time in Greenville. They are very, very particular about what goes in their downtown. They're very proud of it. They put a lot of scrutiny towards it. And that project has won awards. And so I say this because, I mean, that's the pinnacle of what shipping containers can be. Like I said, I mean, they're not just these things that have dents or rusted out and are ugly. I mean, these things can really be mixed with some innovation and be very attractive places. And so I'm just throwing it out of like what the possibilities are and just kind of like where we're at with it as a staff. I think these are some of the things that we point to of the possibilities of what we would be limiting if we did not allow shipping containers, but also what we could be allowing if we did allow shipping containers to be used as like legitimate use or a legitimate building material. So then I'll move on to the final slide. So this is in town here, BNSF Hoop Shed. If you just kind of drive on Highway 12, kind of right after like Hearth and Stone there, this hoop shed is there. You can see the top of the hoop shed, but this was approved in 2019. And essentially what this is a hoop shed where the boundaries are 3 shipping containers. There's, as you can see, 2 pictures, there's the 2 shipping containers that people can drive in, but in the very back is a shipping container as well. And so people have used these. I mean, these are things that exist in town. Like I said, I mean, just the cost of construction is what is driving these, and this is going to be a constant demand, and that is why staff feels that we need to make a formal recommendation on it, or really kind of like formalize an ordinance and look at the uses of shipping containers and what we'd like to see. And so my recommendation is that y'all direct staff to pursue a shipping container ordinance with the Planning Commission that would probably utilize performance standards, identified districts that we wanted to see them in, and also boundaries and we'll say screening in certain areas where we didn't find them very tasteful. But I just wanted to present that shipping containers, when done right, can be very tasteful and very additive to a community. So with that, turn it over for any questions.
Julie?
Okay, I would like for you guys to pursue that, because I know there was a lot of frustration with the homeowner that was with the shipping container for their front porch, because we didn't have anything in place, and we didn't know how to address it. But also another place, Tampa, also has a whole food court thing with the shipping containers, very similar to what you were describing, an open air area where they also have live music and seating and cool area.
Justin?
Are you looking for a formal motion for this, or is this a consensus matter?
Yeah, I guess a formal motion would be appreciated.
Okay. I'd move then to direct staff to work with the Planning Commission to draft an ordinance on shipping containers and direct staff on how to address current containers around town.
Second.
And I guess, so with so the current shipping containers in town, so staff's kind of the mind. So we have some we have a lot that are just kind of unregulated. They just kind of dropped them down on us. Not a lot of input, not a lot of asking. But I guess kind of what would you like us to do with them? I think for us, I mean, we'd kind of like to either give them a year to either come in compliance, whether with the standards that we create, or if they would just like to find like another storage option and then relocate their containers or what have you. But I guess I would be looking, so that's the second part of that motion, of what would y'all like us to do with the current shipping containers?
Councilmember Shoulders.
I don't like the idea of shipping containers in a residential, as a storage facility in a residential area. I see that could be a real eyesore if they're not kept up and not taken care of. But I see a lot of potential for industry, for business and stuff. So I'd like to see some pretty tight regulations on them as far as residential property goes. But yeah, definitely explore how they can be used to help out and can be used in a tasteful way, I guess.
Okay. Rick?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I know the Stingers have had theirs for a couple of years. Baseball Boosters just put one under the bleachers at the new stadium, and it looks very nice. the porch in southwest Willmar, I think that looks nice too, so. There can be some frame utility sheds that don't look so good if they're not maintained too, so. But I would say in general business would be the place.
Okay. All right.
Audrey?
Didn't see them in person, but I saw it on TV that there were some really great examples of how they had converted storage units into, but that was in a residential setting too, and so I'm not so opposed to looking at, I look at a storage shed in my backyard that I don't particularly like either. So I think there should be some constraints on what can be done in residential, but I don't know that they're a whole lot different than having someone put up a maximum backyard storage building too. So I'm okay with looking at that and constraints on the ones that are already existing. That I think is, should maybe give them some time when we come up with our regulations, so you don't make them move it out this year and move them back in next year.
Yep. Yep. That works for us.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any further questions? Roll call.
Councilmember Nelson, you voice vote?
Aye.
That motion carries, 8 ayes, 0 nays.
Okay. Justice, you're up again. Public hearing for rezoning land.
All right. Yeah, so as y'all aware, we've created the General Business 2 District, but when we created the General Business 2 District, thank you, we did not rezone any land into it. So this ordinance would be the actual rezoning of land into the General Business 2 District. And so this public hearing would be set for the second meeting in October, not the first meeting in October, but this would be actually rezoning all the land into the General Business 2 District. So then with that, I turn it over to you, Mr. Mayor, for any questions.
So we're going to set the public hearing tonight.
I have a question, but do all of the properties have to be, there was some area where you weren't going to do some and you were going to do some? This is requiring all of them, right?
No. So this is so all of the listed properties in the ordinance are identified in that specific area. Yep. And so all the land that I talked about, like for the identified area that would be rezoned, all of those parcels will be rezoned into the district that we identified. But that, like I said, those are strict boundaries, and that's why we've listed the legal descriptions. And so once again, for everybody's refresher, General Business 2 would be all of general business for everything south of Willmar Avenue down, all the way down First Street up until Highway 71, essentially. And so that's heavier intensity retail, doesn't have any restrictions on uses. Once again, is to foster development of big box retail and also just for retail with a greater footprint. And then everything kind of north of Willmar Avenue, like I said, on First Street will be more of a neighborhood district, tighter footprints. We've already rezoned that. And so that's kind of everything right now in the general business district. And so that's why the rezoning needs to happen. But yeah, so this isn't everything in general business. This is just the identified parcels and the boundaries that I've kind of already given. And that's everything south of Willmar Avenue and First Street.
Okay.
Do we need a motion?
Yes.
Make a motion to set the public hearing for October 16th.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any questions? Roll call.
That motion carries, 8 ayes, 0 nays.
We need a motion to publish by summary.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Roll call.
That also carries, 8 ayes, 0 nays.
All right, once again, Justice, set public hearing for General Business 3.
All right, so similar thing. We've already created the district for General Business 3. This would just be rezoning the land identified that needs to go into General Business 3 into General Business 3. And so General Business 3, as a refresher, is the more industrial spectrum of the General Business District. This would be to allow things like the food manufacturing, like the processing, like the larger footprints that allow outdoor storage, whether that be for raw materials or larger machinery. These are some of the things that we got rid of in the other general business districts to get those off of First Street and our main corridor and our main drag. So the main boundaries for General Business 3 are Highway 12 West, Highway 12 East, north of Highway 71, Highway North 71, that corridor, and then also First Street south of Highway 71, where West Central Sanitation, South 71 Vet, and those streets over there to allow, like I said, for the larger uses, large-scale uses, more intense uses with more of an industrial flair to them. So then with that, Mr. Mayor, turn it over for you for any questions.
Make a motion to set the public hearing for October 16th at 6:35 or so.
Second.
All right, questions? Roll call.
That motion carries 8 ayes, 0 nays.
Okay, published by summary.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Roll call.
That motion carries 8 ayes, 0 nays.
Thank you, Justice.
Certainly.
One thing I'm going to miss when you're gone is, yeah. All right. Community pride announcements.
Julie.
Justin.
Thank you. Found out from text message that my daughter lost her first tooth while we've been sitting here, so she's very proud about that. But I wanted to say thank you to Justice, Mr. Walker, for all your work that you've done while you've been here. In the short time that you've been here, I feel like you've accomplished a lot, and I've appreciated the energy that you've brought, the expertise that you've brought to many things. And there's a lot of things that we will miss about you when you're gone. But next time it snows in Auburn, I want you to think about us up here.
Yes. Vicki.
I want to say that we could all be proud of our community CERT team. CERT stands for Community Emergency Response Team, and they will be having another class to enlist more members to the CERT team. This will be on Saturday, October 21st and Saturday, October 28th. Both classes run from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And you can get the application by going to willmarmn.gov. Under Departments, pick Willmar Police Department, scroll down to Community, and you will see CERT and the CERT application form.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other? Julie.
I am guessing by the toilet paper in the trees around my house that it is homecoming week. So I just want to wish luck to all the teams that will be competing. And I would like to ask the parents to have a chat with your children. You can go out and partake in some of these activities, but please drive safe. Throwing toilet paper isn't going to hurt anybody. Squealing away at 80 miles an hour will. So just have fun, but drive safe.
All right. Now we go to closed session. This portion of the regular meeting of the city council will be closed pursuant to Minnesota statutes, section 13D.05, subdivision 3C. The following real property will be discussed separately in closed session. Parcel 95, 921, 5710.
Break.
need a motion to close the meeting.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's that?
Can we just take 5 minutes?
Yeah, let me read this. The city council is now in closed session pursuant to Minnesota statutes, section 13D.05 subdivision 3. The time is 9:25.
We're going to need to take a motion to close it when we come back, so we can, if you want to recess, we can recess first.
Okay. That's fine. All right. Recess.
Okay.